Cheers to another goddamn new year. And outside, 2 million drunk Bostonians are getting ready to sing Auld Lang Syne out of tune. I sit there in my easy chair, looking at the clouds, orange with celebration. I wonder if you're out there. Hey! The ice of Boston is muddy and reflects no light, bad day or night. And I slip on it every time. Pop open the third bottle of bubbly. Yeah, and I take that bottle of champagne, go into the kitchen, stand in front of the kitchen window, and I take all my clothes off, take that bottle of champagne, and I pour it on my head, feel a cascade through my hair and across my chest, and the phone rings. And it's my mother. And she says, "Hi, honey, how's Boston?" And I stand there all alone on New Year's Eve, buck naked, drenched in champagne, looking at a bunch of strangers, looking at them, looking at me, looking at them, and I say, "Oh, fine, Mom. How's Washington? Hey, the ice of Boston is muddy and reflects no light, midday or night, and I slip on it every time." Hey, the ice of Boston is muddy and reflects no light, midday or night, and I slip on it every time, yeah. So I guess the party line is I followed you up here. Well, I don't know about that. Mainly because knowing about that would involve knowing about some pathetic, ridiculous, and absolutely true things about myself. I'd rather not admit to right now. I woke up at 3 a.m. with the radio on, that Gladys Knight and the Pip song on, about how she'd rather live in his world with him than live in her own world alone. And I laid there, head spinning, trying to fall asleep, and I thought to myself, "Oh, Gladys, girl, I love you, but oh, get a life! Hey, the ice of Boston is muddy and reflects no light, midday or night, and I slip on it every time." Hey, the ice of Boston is muddy and reflects no light, midday or night, and I slip on it every time. Time, time, time. Time, time, time. Time, time, time. Time, time, time.
Chronology of Organization of North American Nations Revenue Enhancing Subsidized Time, trademark, by year. Year of the Whopper, year of the Tux Medicated Pad, year of the Trial Size Dove Bar, year of the Purdue Wonder Chicken, year of the Whisper Quiet Maytag Dishmaster, year of the Yujitsu 2007 Mimetic Resolution Cartridge View Motherboard Easy to Install Upgrade for Infernatron Interlaced TP Systems for Home, Office, or Mobile. Year of Dairy Products from the American Heartland. Year of the Depend Adult Undergarment. Year of Glad. Jim's eldest, Orrin, punter extraordinaire, dodger of flung acid extraordinaire, had once shown Joel Van Dyne his childhood collection of husks of the lemon pledge that the school's players used to keep the sun off. Different sized legs and portions of legs, well muscled arms, a battery of 5-holed masks hung on nails from an upright fiberboard sheet. Not all the husks had names below them. Boylston Street East means she passes again the black bronze equestrian statue of Boston's Colonel Shaw and the MA 54th, illuminated now by a patch of emergent sunlight. Shaw's metal head and raised sword illicitly draped in a large Quebecois fleur-de-lis flag with all 4 irises stems altered to red blades. So it's absurdly now a red, white, and blue flag. 3 Boston cops on ladders with poles and shears. The Canadian militants come in the night on the eve of interdependence, thinking anyone cares whether they hang things from historic icons, hang anti-ONAN flags, as if anyone not paid to remove them cares one way or the other. The encaged and suicidal have a really hard time imagining anyone caring passionately about anything. And here too are E. Boylston's dealers, sirens of the other, second cage, standing as always outside FAO Schwartz, young little black boys so black they're blue, horrifically skinny and young, little more than living shadows in knit caps and knee-length sweatshirts and very white high tops, shifting and blowing into their cupped hands, alluding to the availability of a certain material, just barely alluding is all, with their postures and bored, blank, important gaze. Certain salesmen have only to stand there, certain types of sales. The customer comes to you. The cops at the flag across the street don't give him a look. Joelle hurries past the line of dealers. She tries to, her clogs loose and clocking, tarrying for just a moment at the end, just past the gauntlet's end, still within 2 extended hands' reach of the last bored dealer. For here on the street outside Schwartz is placed an odd adverting display, not a live salesman of any sort, but rather a humanoid figure of something that's better than cardboard, untouched by the vendors, who don't seem even to look. A display on an angled rear mount stand, like a photo frame stand. 2D, the figure, a man in a wheelchair, in a coat and tie, his lap blanketed and no legs below, his well-fed face artistically reddened with some terrible joy, his smile's arc of the extreme curvature that exists between mirth and fury, his ecstasy terrible to see, his head hairless and plastic and cast back, his eyes on the blue harlequin patches of the post-storm sky, looking straight up, or having a seizure, or ecstatic, his arms also up and out in a gesture of submission, or triumph, or thanks. His oddly thick right hand, the receptacle for the black spine of the case of some new film cartridge being advertised for distribution, the cartridge stuck like a tongue out of a slot in his lineless palm, except there is only this display, this ecstatic figure, and cartridge no feral vendors removed, no mention of title, no blurbs, or quoted references to critics' thumbs. The case's spine itself bare black, slightly pebbled generic plastic, conspicuously unlabeled. 2 Oriental women's shopping bags catch and make her raincoat billow slightly as Joelle stands there briefly, feeling the lines, dealers looking at her, assessing. And then someone calls something to one of the cops halfway up the statue, using his first name, which echoes slightly and breaks the spell. The little black boys look away. None of the passers-by seem to notice the display she stands before, reflecting. It's some kind of anti-ad to direct attention at what is not said, lead up to an inevitability you deny. Not new, but an expensive and affecting display. The film cartridge itself would be blank, too, or the case empty, Worthless because it really can be removed all the way from the slot in the figure's hand. Joelle removes it, looks at it, and puts it back. She's had her last fling with film cartridges. Jim had used her several times. Jim, at the end, had filmed her at prodigious and multi-lensed length and refused to share what he'd made of it, and died without a note. Her mental name for the man had been Infinite Jim. The display cartridge shoves home with a click. One of the such young dealers calls her Mama and asks where the funeral at. For a while after the acid, after first Oren left, and then Jim came and made her sit through the filmed apology scene, and then vanished, and then came back, but only 4 years, 7 months, 6 days past to leave for a while after taking the veil. For a while, she liked to get really high and clean. Joelle did. Scrub sinks until they were mint white, dust the ceilings without using any kind of ladder, vacuum like a fiend, and put in a fresh vacuum bag after each room. Imitate the wife and mother they both declined to shoot. Use Incandescence's toothbrush on tiles grout. In places along Boylston, cars are triple parked. People's wipers are on that setting that Joelle, who does not drive, imagines to read occasional on the controls. Her own personal daddy's old car had wipers controls on the turn signal, stalked by the wheel. Available yellow cabs pass, hissing in the streets. Over half the passing cabs out there in the rain are advertising themselves as available. Purple numbers lit below taxi. As she remembers things, Jim was, besides a great filmic mind and her true heart's friend, the world's best hailer of Boston cabs. Known to have less hail than conjured cabs in spots where Boston cabs, by all that's right, just are not. A hailer of Boston cabs in places like Petersburg, Indiana, and Powell, Wyoming. Something in the authority of the lifted arm's height, the oncoming taxi undergoing a sort of parallax as it bore down over tumbleweed streets, appearing under Incandenza's upraised palm as if awaiting benediction. He was a tall and physically slow moving man with a great love of taxis, and they loved him back. Never again a cab in 4+ years after that. And so Joelle Van Dyne, aka Madame P, surrendered, suicidal, issues tumbrel or hack her solid clogs sounding formal on the smooth cement down Boylston sidewalk past fine stores, revolving doors southeast towards Ceres brownstone terrain, open coat swirling over poncho, and hanging rain breaking into stutters and drips. After she had smoked homemade freebase cocaine this AM for the last time, and then fired up the chore boys and good panties she'd used as last filter and choked on burned acetate, when she shredded and smoked them and had wept and imprecated at the mirrors and thrown away her paraphernalia again for the final time, when an hour later she walked not formally to her tea stop under a parliament of gathering storm clouds and faint sticky bits of autumn thunder to ride to Upper Brighton and find Lady Delphina, get real weight from Lady Delphina, so hard to just cut it off in mid binge on a Saturday, unless you just passed out, to tell LD when she said goodbye, and it was the last time. It had been really the penultimate time, but that this was the last time. This was goodbye for real. And get serious weight from Lady Delphina. Pay her twice the 8 gram rate as generous farewell. As she walked without much real formality to her tea stop and stood on the platform, each time mistaking little mutters of thunder for the approach of the train, wanting more of it so badly she could feel her brain heaving around in its skull. Then a pleasant and gentle faced older black man in raincoat and hat with a little flat back feather in the band, and the sort of black framed stylish spectacles pleasant older black men wear, with the weary but dignified mild comportment of the older black, waiting alone with her on the chill, dim Davis Square subway platform. This man had folded his herald neatly lengthwise and had it under the same arm he tipped his hat with, and said to excuse him if this was an intrusion, he said, but he'd had occasion to see one or two of these linen veils before around, like what she wore and was interested in, rendered curious. He pronounced all four syllables of interested, which Joel from Kentucky enjoyed. If he might be so bold, he said, tipping his hat. Joel had engaged with him completely, which was extremely rare, even off the air. She rather welcomed the chance to think about anything else at all, with the train surely never pulling in. She reflected that the anecdote had gotten about, but not the incident's legacy, she said, as if that part were hidden. The union of the hideously and improbably deformed was unofficially founded in London in BS 1940 in London, UK, by the cross-eyed, palate-cleft, and wildly carbuncular wife of a junior member of the House of Commons, a lady whom Sir Winston Churchill, PM UK, having had several glasses of port plus a toddy at a reception for an American Lend-Lease administrator, had addressed in a fashion wholly inappropriate to social intercourse between civilized gentlemen and ladies, unwittingly all but authoring the union designed to afford the scopophobic empathic fellowship and the genesis of sturdy inner resources through shame-free and unconstrained concealment. Winston Churchill, when the lady, no person's doormat, informed him with prim asperity that he appeared to be woefully inebriated, made the anecdotally famous reply that while yes, yeah, verily, he was indeed inebriated, he would the following AM be once again sober, while she, dear lady, would tomorrow still be hideously and improbably deformed. Churchill doubtless underweighed the emotional pressures during this period in history, had then proceeded to extinguish his cigar in the lady's sherry, and to place a finger bowl napkin delicately over the ruined features of her flaming visage. The laminated non-photo UHID membership card Joel showed the interested old black gentleman related all this data and more in a point size so tiny the card looked somehow both blank and defaced. Putative curriculum vitae of Helen P. Steepley, 36, 1 meter 93, 100 kilograms, AB, MGA. 1 year time, graduate intern, newsmaker section. 16 months, decade magazine, hottest and nottest, a trends and style analysis column, until decade folded. 5 years, Southwest Annual, human interest, geriatric medical, personality, and tourism articles. 5 months, Newsweek, 11 small features on trends and entertainment until her executive director, with whom she was in love, left Newsweek and took her with him. 1 year, Ladies' Day, personality and medical cosmetic features, some research firsthand, until 1 week in which the executive editor reconciled with his wife and HPS got mugged and purse snatched on West 62nd and vowed never again to live in Manhattan. 15 months to present, Moment magazine, Southwest Bureau, Arithema, Arizona, medical, soft sports, personality, and home entertainment trends reporting, masthead byline, contributing editor status. Thereafter, proceeding first to the Upper Brighton and now to the cooperative Back Bay Edge brownstone she had lived in once with Orrin and performed in with his father, and then passed on to Molly Notkin, today's party's guest of honor and hostess in one, as of yesterday, enjoying ABD pre-doctoral status in film and film cartridge theory at MIT, having cleared the notorious hurdle of oral examinations on that day by offering her examination committee a dramatically rendered, and if she did say so herself, devastating oral critique of post-millennial Marxist film cartridge theory from the point of view of Marx himself. Marx as pretend film cartridge theorist and scholar, still dressed as KM a day later in celebration, the glued beard matted and pubic black, Homburg ordered directly from Wiesbaden, soot from a terribly obscure British souvenir filth shop. She has no idea that Joelle's been in a cage since YTSDB, has no idea what she and Jim Incandenza were even about for 21 months, whether they were lovers or what, whether Oren left because they were lovers or what, or that Joelle even now lives hand to lung on a grossly generous trust willed her by a man she unveiled for but never slept with, the prodigious punter's father, infinite jester, director of a final opus so magnum he'd claimed to have had it locked away. Joelle's never seen the completed assembly of what she'd appeared in, or seen anyone who's seen it, and doubts that any sum of scenes as pathologic as he'd stuck that long quartzy auto-wobbling lens on the camera and filmed her for could have been as entertaining as he'd said the thing he'd always wanted to make had broken his heart by ending up. Climbing to the third floor, stairs pale from wear, still trembling from the AM's interruptus, Joelle finds herself having a hard time climbing, as if the force of gravity goes up as she does. The party sounds start around the second landing. Here is Molly Notkin, dressed as a crumbling Marx, again greeting Joelle at her door with the sort of delighted mock surprise U.S. hostesses use for greetings. Nutkin secures Joelle's veil for her during removal of the beaded coat and poncho, then lifts the veil slightly in a practiced two-finger gesture to deliver a double cheek kiss that is sour with cigarettes and wine. Joelle never smokes when veiled, asking how Joelle got here, and then, without waiting for an answer, offering that odd kind of British Columbian apple juice they found they both liked so, and that Joelle at home's abandoned and gone back to the big red soda water of childhood, which doesn't know, and still cluelessly considers extra sweet Canadian juice to be pretty much both her and Joelle's biggest vices. Molly Notkin's the kind of soul you want desperately to be polite to, but have to hide it with because she'd be mortified if she suspected you were ever just being polite to her about anything. Drell makes a get out of here gesture. The really, really good kind. The kind that looks muddy, it's so fresh. Where'd you get it this late, this far east? The kind you just about have to strain, it's so fresh. The living room is full and hot. Campy mambo playing, walls still the same off white, but all the trim now a confectioner's rich brown. Or plus there's wine. Drell sees a whole assortment on the old sideboard. It took three men with cigars and gray jumpsuits to get up the stairs when they got it. An assortment of bottles of different shapes and dim colors and different levels of what's inside. Molly Notkin has one dirty nailed hand on Joelle's arm and one on the head of a chair of Maya Darren, brooding avant-gardely in vivid spun glass polymers, and is telling Joelle about her orals in a party's near shout that will leave her hoarse well before this big one's said end. A good muddy juice fills Joelle's mouth with spit that's as good as the juice, and her linen veil is drying and beginning once again comfortingly to flutter with her breath, and perched alone and glanced at covertly by persons who don't know they know her voice. She feels the desire to raise the veil before a mirror, to refine some of her purse's untouched material, raise the veil, and set free the encaged, rapacious thing inside to breathe, the only unclothed gas it can stomach. She feels ghastly and sad. She looks like death. Her mascara is all over the place, no one can tell. The plastic Pepsi bottle and glass cigar tube and lighter and a pack of glycine bags are a shape in the corner of the rain darkened cloth purse that rests on the floor just below her dangling clogs. Molly Nutkin is standing with Rutherford Keck and Crosby Baum, an erratically bad postured man before the school supplied Infernatron viewer. Baum's wide back and pompadour obscure whatever's on the screen. Academics' voices sound nasal with a cultivated stutter at sentences' start. A good many of James O. Incandescence's films were silent. He was a self acknowledged visual filmmaker. His damaged, grinning boy, Joel never got to know because Orrin had disliked him, often carried the case with the lenses, grinning like somebody squinting into bright light. That insufferable child actor Smothergill used to contort his face at the boy, and he'd just laugh, which sent Smothergill into tantrums that Miriam Prickett would resolve in the bathroom somehow. An old Latin revival CD, issues at acceptable volume from the speakers, screwed into planters and hung with thin chains from each corner of the cream ceiling. Another large loose group is dancing in the cleared space between the cluster of directorial chairs and the bedroom door, most favoring YDAU's minimal mambo, this autumn's East Coast anti-craze, the dancers appearing to be just this side of standing still, the subtlest possible hints of finger snapping under right-angled elbows. Or in Incandenza, she has not forgotten, had a poor mottled swollen elbow above a forearm the size of a leg of lamb. He had switched neatly from arm to leg. Joel was Orin Incandenza's only lover for 26 months and his father's optical beloved for 21. A foreign academic with an almost Franciscan bald spot has the swirling limp of someone with a prosthesis hired by MIT after her time. The better dancers' movements are so tiny they are evocative and compel watching. Their near static mass curled and bent somehow subtly around one beautiful young woman, quite beautiful, her back undulating minimally in a thin, tight blue and white striped sailorish top as she alludes to a cha cha with maracas empty of anything to rattle, watching herself almost dance in the full length mirror of quality plate that after Oren left Joel had forbidden Jim to hang and had slid beneath her bed face down. Now it's the west wall's framed mirror, hung between two empty ornate gilt frames. Notkin thinks she's been retro ironic by having the frames themselves framed in rather less ornate frames, in wry allusion to the early experialist fashion of making art out of the accessories of artistic presentation, the framed frames hanging not quite evenly on either side of the mirror he'd cut for the scenes of that last ghastly thing he'd made her stand before, reciting in the openly empty tones she'd gone on to use on air. The girl stands transfixed in alternating horizontal blue and white, then vertically sliced by bar cut sunlight, diced, drunk, so wrecked on good vintage her lips hang slack and the reflected cheeks' muscles have lost all integrity, and the cheeks jiggle like the outstanding paps in her little sailor's top. Apocalyptic rouge and a nose ring that's either electrified or is catching bits of light from the window. She's watching herself with unself conscious fascination in the only serviceable mirror here outside the bathroom. This absence of shame at the self obsession? Is she Canadian? Mirror cult? Not possibly a UHID. The bearing's all wrong. But now, whispered to by a near motionless man in an equestrian helmet, she turns abruptly, falling away from her own reflection to explain, not to the man so much as to no one in particular, the whole dancing mess. I was just looking at my tits, she says, looking down at herself. Aren't they beautiful? And it's moving. And there is something so heartbreakingly sincere in what she says. Joelle wants to go to her, tell her it is and will be completely all right. She's pronounced beautiful, like the earlier interested, in four syllables, splitting the diphthong, beautiful, betraying her class and origin with the heartbreaking openness Joelle's always viewed as either terribly stupid or terribly brave. The girl raising her striped arms in triumph or artless thanks for being constructed this way, these tits, built by whom and for whom, never occurring, artlessly ecstatic. She's not drunk, Joelle now sees, but has taken ecstasy, Joelle can see, from the febrile flush and eyes jacked so wide you can make out brain meat behind the bald's poles, aka X or MDMA, a beta something, an early synthetic emotional acid, the love drug, so called, big among the artistic young under, say, Bush and successors, since fallen into relative disuse because its pulverizing hangover has been linked to the impulsive use of automatic weapons in public venues, a hangover that makes a freebase hangover look like a day at the emotional beach. The difference between suicide and homicide consisting perhaps only in where you think you discern the cage's door. Would she kill somebody else to get out of the cage? Was the allegedly fatally entertaining and scopophiliac thing Jim alleges he made out of her unveiled face here at the start of YTSDB a cage, or really a door? Had he even cut the tape onto something coherent? There was nothing coherent in the mother death cosmology and apologies she'd repeated over and over, inclined over that auto wobbled lens propped up in the plate sided pram. He never let her see it, not even the dailies. He killed himself less than 90 days later. Fewer than 90 days? How much must a person want out to put his head in a microwave oven? A dim woman all the kids had known of in Boas had put her cat in a microwave to dry it after a thick bath and set the oven just on defrost, and the cat ended up all over the woman's kitchen walls. How would you rig the thing so it would activate with the door open? Is there just some sort of refrigerator light button you could hold down and secure with tape? Would the tape melt? She cannot remember thinking of it once in 4 years. Did she kill him somehow, just inclining veilless over that lens? The woman in love with her own breasts is being congratulated with the subtlest possible allusions to clapping hands from barely animate dancers with their glass tulips held between their teeth, and Fogle song of Emerson College tries suddenly to stand on his head and is immediately ill in a spreading plum colored ectoplasm. The dancers do not even try to evade the spread of, and Joel applauds the ecstatic woman as well, because they are, Joel admits freely, the paps. They are attractive, which in the union is designated compelling within compatible relative limits. Joelle has no problem seeing beauty approved within compatible and relative limits. She feels not empathy or maternal nurture any longer, just a desire to swallow every last drop of saliva she will ever manufacture and exit this vessel. Have 15 more minutes of too much fun. Eliminate her own map with the afflatus of the blind god of all doorless cages, and she lets herself slide forward from the Millier's lap, a tiny fall leading with her lumpy purse and glass of matte apple juice toward the door beyond the lines of a becalmed conga and doorwayed huddles of a warm and well-felt theoretical party. And then again, the latest dithers, and the easement to the bathroom is blocked. She is the only veiled woman here, and an academic generation ahead of most of these candidates, and rather feared, even though not many know she's an oral personality, feared for quitting instead of failing, and because of the connection of the memory of Jim, and she is given a certain wide social berth, allowed to delay and orbit and stand unengaged at the fringes of shifting groups, obliquely glanced at, a veil going concave at each in-breath, waiting with hip-shut nonchalance for the bathroom of the door of the bedroom to clear. Icarino, the chaplain archivist, and a jaundiced yellow older man have gone into Molly's bedroom and left the door ajar, waiting nonchalantly, ignoring the foreign academic who wishes to know where she works with that veil, turning from him, rudely, brain heaving in its bone box, memorizing every detail like collecting empty shells, sipping cloudy juice under neatly lifted corners of veil, now looking at, instead of through the translucent cloth, the improbably deformed equivalent of closing the eyes in concentration on sound, letting the very last party wash over her, passed gracefully by different mingling guests, and once or twice almost touched, seeing only inrushing and then billowing white, listening into different mingling voices, the way the unveiled young taste wine. This is a technologically constituted space. Thing opens tight on Remington in a hideous grandfatherly flannel suit. Black and white, straight, full frontal shot in his grainy black and white stuff. Bouvier taught him to manipulate the f-stop to mimic that horrid old Super 8. Straight, full frontal, staring past the camera. No attempt to disguise he's reading off a prompter. Monotone and all saying, few foreigners realize that the German term Berliner is also the Vulgate idiom for a common jelly donut, and thus that Kennedy's seminal Ich bin ein Berliner was greeted by the Teutonic crowds with a delight only apparently political, at which point he aims his thumb and finger at his own temple, at which point his TA doubles the focal length. So there's this giant, I would die to defend your constitutional right to error, friend, but in this one case, you. They used to be less beautiful, but then Rutherford said to quit sleeping face down. No, no, no. I'm saying that this whole thing that what you and I are discursing within is a technologically constituted space. Adieu nous avons foi au présent. It's good cheese, but I had better cheese. Mainwaring, this is Kirby. Kirby's in pain. He's been telling me about it, and now he'd like to tell you about it. Complete mystery why Eve Plum didn't show. It's known she read up for the part. The whole rest of them were here, even Henderson and that Davis woman as Alice, who had to be wheeled out under nurse's care. My God, and Peter, looking as if he'd eaten nothing but pastry for the past 40 years. Greg with that absurd hairpiece and snakeskin boots. Yes, but all the kids recognizable underneath. Somehow, this pre-digital insistence on continuity through time that was the project's whole magic. And raison, this you're current on pre-digital phenomenology and Brady theory. And then, but now, here's the entirely incongruous middle-aged black woman playing Jan. De gustibus non est disputandum. Balls. An incongruous central blackness could have served to accentuate the terrible whiteness that had been an the entire historical effect of a seminal program was horribly, horribly altered. Terribly altered. Eisenstein, Kurosawa, and Miho walk into a bar. Those mass market cartridges for the masses. The ones that are so bad, they're somehow perversely good. This was worse than that. So-called phantom, but real and mobile. First the spine, then not the spine, but the right eye socket. Then the old sockets fit as fiddle for the thumb. The thumb doubles me over. Ah, I won't stay. It won't stay put. Fucks with the emulsions gradient so that all the tesseract's angles appear to be right angled, except in. So what I did, I sat up right next to him. You see, so in a sense, he didn't have room to stalk or draw a bead. Keck had said they needed a good 10 minutes, so I cocked the hat just so, just ever so slightly, like so, just cocked it over to the side, like so, and sat down practically on the man's knee, asked after his show carb. He keeps pedigreed carb, and of course, you can imagine what more interesting issue from a Heideggerian perspective is a priori what the space as a concept is enframed by technology as a concept. It has a mobile cunning, a kind of wraith or phantom like, because they're emotional, more labile at that stage. So get dentures, she said. Who shot the incision? Who did the cinematography on the incision? Way it can be film qua film. Comstock says it even exists. It has to be something more like an aesthetic pharmaceutical. Some beastly post-annular scopophilical vector, supra-subliminals in that, some kind of abstractable hypnosis on optical dopamine cue, a recorded delusion. Duquette says he lost contact with 3 colleagues. He said a good bit of Berkeley wasn't answering their phone. I don't mind anyone here would dispute that they're absolutely fetching tits, Melinda. We had blindies with caviar. We are tartines. We had sweetbreads and mushroom cream sauce. We said it was all on him. He said he was treating. There was roast artichoke top of a sort of sly aioli mutton stuffed with foie gras, double chocolate rum cake, 7 kinds of cheese, a kiwi glacé, and brandy and snifters. You need 2 hands to swirl. Ah, that coke-addled fag in his Morris Mini, the prosthetic film scholar. Fans do not begin to keep it all in the great convexity. It creeps back in. What goes in, what goes around, it comes back around. This your nation refuses to learn. It will keep creeping back in. You cannot give away your filth and prevent all creepage, no? Filth, by its very nature, is a thing that is creeping always back. Me, I can remember when your Charles was cafe with cream. Look at it now. It's the Blue River. You have a river outside you that is robin eggs blue. I think you mean great concavity, Alain. I meant great convexity. I know what is the thing I meant. Well, then it turned out he put ipecac in the brandy. It was the most horrible thing you've ever seen. Everyone all over spouting like whales. I heard the term projectile vomiting, but I never thought and I you could aim. The pressure was such that you could aim. And out come this grad technicians from under the tablecloths like overhang, and he pulls out a canvas chair and clapper and begins filming the whole horrible, staggering, spouting, groaning. This ultimate cartridge is ecstatic, deaf. Rumors been going around like a lazy toilet since Dishmaster, for Christ's sake. Simply make inquiries. Mention some obscure foundation grant. Obtain the thing through whatever shade of market the thing's alleged to be out in. Have a look. See that it's doubtless just high concept erotica or an hour of rotating worlds. Or something like Laith Makayev. Something that's only entertaining after it's over, on reflection. The striated parallelogram of PM sunlight is elongating in transit across the coupe's eastern wall, over bottle laden sideboard and glass cabinet of antique editing equipment, and louvered vent and shelves of art cartridges, their dull black and dun cases. The mole studded man in the equestrian helmet is either winking at her or had a tick. There's the pre suicide's classic longing. Sit down 1 second. I want to tell you everything. My name is Joel Van Dyne, Dutch Irish, and I was reared on family lands east of Shiny Price, Kentucky. The only child of a low pH chemist and his second wife. I now have no accent except under stress. I'm 1 meter 70 tall and weigh 48 kilograms. I occupy space and mass. I breathe in and breathe out. Joel has never before done any curious of the sustained volition required to just breathe in and breathe out, her veil recessing into nose and rounded mouth, and then bowing out slightly like curtains over a open pane. Convexity, concavity, convexity. Concavity, damn your eyes. The bathroom has a hook and a mirror medicine cabinet over the sink, and it's off the bedroom. Molly Nutkin's bedroom looks like the bedroom of someone who stays in bed for serious lengths of time. A pair of pantyhose has been tossed onto a lamp. There are not crumbs, but whole portions of crackers protruding from the gray surf of whoops up bedding. A photo of the phalnerotic New Yorker with the same fold-out triangular support as the blank cartridge's anti-ad. A ziploc of pot and easy widers and seeds in the ashtray, with German and Cyrillic titles lie open in spine-cracking attitudes on the colorless rug. Joel never liked the fact that Nutkin's father's photograph is nailed at iconic height to the wall above the headboard, a systems planner out of Knoxville, Tennessee. His smile, the smile of a man who wears white loafers and a squirting carnation. Why are bathrooms always brighter lit than whatever room they're off? Hmm. On the private side of the bathroom door, she's hauled to wake two damn towels for the top of to close all the way, the same rotten old hook for a lock, never quite ever seeming to want to fit its receptacle in the jam. And the party's music now some horrible collection of mollified rock classics with all soft rock's grim dental associations. The business side of the door is hung with a selective automation of Knoxville calendar from before subsidized time, and cutout photos of Kinski as Paganini and Leod as Doniel, and a borderless still of the crowd scene with what looks like Peterson's the lead shoes, and rather curiously, the off-printed page of Van Dyne, MA's one and only published film theory monograph. Joelle can smell through her veil and own stale exhalations, the little room's complicated spice of sandalwood rubble in a little violet ribboned pomander and deodorant soap, and the sharp decayed lemon odor of stress diarrhea. Low budget celluloid horror films created ambiguity and possible illusion by putting question mark after the end is what pops into her head. The end question mark amid the odors of mildew and dicky academic digestion. Drell's mother's family had no indoor plumbing. It is all right. She represses all pathetic. This will be the last thing I smell thought patterns. Drell is going to have too much fun in here. It was beyond all else so much fun at the start. Orrin had neither disapproved nor partaken. His urine was an open book because of football. Jim hadn't disapproved so much as been vacant with disinterest. His too much was neat bourbon, and he had lived life to the fullest and then gone in for detoxification again and again. This had been simply too much fun at the start. So much better even than nasaling the material up through rolled currency and waiting for the cold, bitter drip at the back of your throat and cleaning the newly spacious apartment to within an inch of its life while your mouth twitches and writhes unbidden beneath the wail. The base frees and condenses, compresses the whole experience to the implosion of one terribly shattering spike in the graph, an inflated orgasm of the art that makes her feel truly attractive, sheltered by limits, deveiled and loved, observed and alone, and sufficient and female, full, as if watched for an instant by God. She always sees after inhaling right at the apex at the graph spikes tip Bernini's ecstasy of Saint Teresa. Behind the glass, at the Vittoria for some reason, the saint recumbent, half supine, her flowing stone robe lifted by the angel in whose other hand a bare arrow is raised for that the best descent, the saint's legs frozen in opening, the angel's expression not charity but the perfect vice of barb-headed love. The stuff had been not just her encaging god but her lover, too fiendish, angelic of rock. The toilet seat is up. She can hear a helicopter's chop somewhere overhead east, a traffic helicopter over Storo, and Molly Notkin's shriek as an enormous glass crash sounds off in the living room, imagines her beard hanging aslant and her mouth ellipsed with champagne's foam as she waves off the breakage that signals good party, can hear through the door the ecstatic Melinda's apologies and Molly's laugh, which sounds like a shriek. Oh, everything falls off the wall sooner or later.